We begin our exhaustive forensic audit of modern human exhaustion by dismantling the central, sacred dogma of industrial labor management. Part 1. The 8-hour illusion. For over a century, public health institutions, corporate efficiency experts, and well-meaning medical consensus have conditioned you to believe that human biology requires a rigid, uninterrupted 8-hour block of nightly slumber. We begin our dismantling with lie number 1, the mandatory 8-hour rule. This universal metric is not a natural biological constant carved into human DNA. It is an arbitrary, industrial-era construct engineered to align human physiology with the relentless gear train of factory shift work. By imposing a single, monolithic mathematical requirement upon 8 billion unique organisms, modern society completely ignores individual genetic chronotypes. The distinct, inherited clock genes like PER3 and CRY1 that govern our cellular metabolic rhythms. When you force a natural short sleeper or a late-phase biological variant into a standardized 8-hour mold, you generate a perpetual state of psychological guilt and physiological friction. Millions of functional adults lie awake in the dark, staring at the ceiling in existential terror, convinced their bodies are broken simply because they woke up after 6 hours of deep, fully restorative sleep, or because their internal clock refuses to shut down at 10 o'clock. This artificial standard transforms normal biological variation into a manufactured medical disorder, forcing healthy humans to consume pharmaceutical sedatives to achieve a synthetic 8-hour unconsciousness that mimics industrial compliance rather than true biological recovery. This artificial consolidation of rest becomes even more sinister when we examine how modern economic architecture erased our ancestral sleep architecture entirely, leading directly to lie number 2, biphasic sleep suppression. Before the sweeping, relentless expansion of gaslighting and the Industrial Revolution, human beings did not sleep in a single, desperate, continuous block. The historical norm across virtually every global culture was segment sleep, a natural biphasic pattern consisting of a first sleep beginning shortly after dusk, followed by a quiet 2-hour period of midnight wakefulness known as the watch, and ending with a second sleep extending toward dawn. During this nocturnal interlude, brain chemistry shifted into a unique state of calm contemplation, marked by elevated levels of prolactin and reduced stress hormones, allowing humanity to reflect, read, converse, or intimate without anxiety. However, the advent of artificial illumination and the ruthless efficiency of the modern 9-to-5 labor schedule systematically destroyed this biological heritage. Modern industrial capitalism could not tolerate a workforce that woke up for 2 hours in the middle of the night to contemplate its own existence. Biphasic sleep was branded as inefficient and pathologized as middle-of-the-night insomnia, forcing humanity to compress its entire nocturnal rest into a single high-pressure window, leaving millions to panic when they inevitably wake up at 2 in the morning, entirely unaware that their bodies are simply trying to honor millions of years of evolutionary design. When this compressed workweek leaves us thoroughly depleted, we inevitably turn to the comforting psychological trap of lie number 3, catching up on weekends. Society sells the convenient myth that sleep operates like a simple banking account, that you can greedily overdraw your biological ledger from Monday through Friday and then settle the balance with a massive 12-hour sleep marathon on Saturday and Sunday morning. Biology, however, does not honor your financial metaphors. This practice induces a severe physiological shock known as social jet lag. When you shift your sleep schedule by 3 or 4 hours over the weekend, you physically displace your central circadian clock, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, forcing it out of sync with your peripheral organ clocks in the liver, gut, and heart. By sleeping until noon on Sunday, you effectively fly your body across 3 time zones, only to violently yank it back to your local office time zone less than 24 hours later. The result is not recovery, but a violent metabolic and neurological hangover. This massive weekend shift guarantees that by Sunday night, your melatonergic drive is completely shattered, ensuring that Monday morning arrives with a wave of brutal, unearned exhaustion that ruins the entire first half of your production week. As Monday morning arrives, millions of exhausted workers seek refuge in a small plastic button on their nightstand, falling victim to lie number 4, the snooze button security blanket. When your morning alarm detonates, pulling you out of slumber, the human brain experiences a natural state of cognitive impairment called sleep inertia, a temporary fog caused by the lingering presence of high adenosine levels and sleep-inducing delta waves. Hitting the snooze button to bargain for 9 extra minutes of rest seems like an act of self-care, but it is actually a form of neurological self-sabotage. When you drift back to sleep after an alarm, your brain interprets the dive into unconsciousness as the start of a brand new 90-minute sleep cycle. When the snooze alarm explodes 9 minutes later, it violently interrupts this nascent cycle at its most vulnerable, high-amplitude stage. Repeating this vicious cycle 3 or 4 times fragmentally shreds your brain's microsleep architecture, flooding your central nervous system with conflicting neurochemical signals. Instead of gently transitioning into waking consciousness, you plunge yourself into severe, prolonged sleep inertia, dragging a heavy, suffocating cloud of brain fog through your morning routine that can take up to 4 hours to dissipate. The root of this morning trauma, however, lies in the very instrument sitting on your bedside table, exposing lie number 5, alarm clocks as healthy wake-ups. The human body was designed to transition out of sleep through a gradual, elegant environmental dance. Rising ambient light penetrates closed eyelids, suppressing melatonin production while slowly priming the adrenal glands to release a controlled wave of cortisol. The modern acoustic alarm clock violently shatters this millions of years old biological sequence. A loud, sudden, high-frequency alarm acts on the brain as an acute, life-threatening emergency. The brainstem recognizes the abrasive sound as an immediate predator threat, triggering a massive sympathetic nervous system surge that violently spikes your heart rate, surges your blood pressure, and floods your bloodstream with toxic levels of adrenaline and cortisol. If this acoustic assault occurs while you are trapped in deep REM sleep, the critical phase reserved for emotional processing and memory consolidation, the physiological shock is amplified tenfold. You are yanked directly out of a paralyzed, dreaming state into a state of acute hyperarousal, starting your day in a state of chemical panic that damages vascular endothelial tissue over time and sets a baseline of baseline anxiety that persists until nightfall. Those who naturally resist this brutal early morning industrial rhythm find themselves victimized by lie number 6, the night owl laziness stigma. Corporate society has long celebrated the hyper-early riser, while casting late-stage sleepers as morally deficient, undisciplined, or inherently lazy. This cultural shaming represents a fundamental ignorance of human genetics. Late sleep timing, medically classified in its extreme as delayed sleep phase syndrome, is not a character flaw or a failure of willpower. It is a fixed, genetically determined evolutionary adaptation. In ancestral hunter-gatherer bands, staggering individual sleep schedules across a group ensured that someone was awake and vigilant during almost every hour of the dark, protecting the sleeping tribe from nocturnal predators. The night owl was the nocturnal sentinel of human survival. Modern corporate culture, however, has flattened this vital evolutionary diversity, forcing night owls to operate in a state of permanent biological misalignment. Forced to conform to early work schedules, these individuals suffer from chronic sleep restriction, elevated systemic inflammation, and severe metabolic dysfunction, all while enduring the toxic cultural narrative that their unique, genetically mandated biological clock is nothing more than personal laziness. This toxic cultural bias reaches its absolute performance cult apex in lie number 7, the early bird advantage myth. Promoted heavily by corporate self-help gurus and executive productivity influencers, This myth preaches that blindly forcing yourself into a 5 o'clock morning routine is the ultimate non-negotiable secret to high-level professional success and personal mastery. However, waking up at 5 in the morning without proportionally advancing your nightly sleep onset is not a display of high-level discipline. It is an act of deliberate biological starvation. When you artificially curtail your sleep window to join the early morning productivity cult, you systematically slice off the final 2 hours of your sleep cycle, the exact period overwhelmingly concentrated with REM sleep. Depriving the brain of REM sleep shatters emotional regulation, destroys creative problem-solving capacity, and impairs prefrontal cortex executive function. Furthermore, forcing your body to perform physical workouts or complex cognitive tasks during its biological temperature trough, when internal core temperature is at its absolute lowest, drastically elevates injury risk, blunts metabolic hormone sensitivity, and triggers chronic systemic stress. The early bird advantage rapidly transforms into a physiological disaster, proving that sacrificing essential biological recovery at the altar of fashionable morning routines is the ultimate form of self-delusion. We advance our cold, systematic investigation from the psychological illusions of the alarm clock to the massive, multi-billion-dollar chemical deception that keeps modern industrial labor standing on its feet. Part 2. The Caffeine Dependency Matrix. For over 2 centuries, global beverage conglomerates and corporate efficiency strategists have engineered a masterclass in mass chemical compliance, convincing a chronically exhausted populace that physical vitality can be purchased in a paper cup. We begin this chemical autopsy with lie number 8. Coffee gives you real energy. This is perhaps the most ubiquitous biological lie of the modern age. Coffee contains 0 caloric energy, 0 structural fuel, and 0 metabolic substrate capable of powering cellular work. In reality, caffeine is a potent psychoactive plant alkaloid that acts as an aggressive neurochemical imposter. Throughout your waking hours, your brain continuously metabolizes adenosine triphosphate, accumulating a toxic metabolic byproduct called adenosine. As adenosine binds to its corresponding receptors in the basal forebrain, it creates a rising, non-negotiable sensation called sleep pressure, your brain's natural, elegant signal that cellular maintenance is required. Caffeine possesses a molecular structure almost identical to adenosine, allowing it to dock into those exact same neural receptors without activating them. It does not give you energy, it merely blinds your brain to its own chemical exhaustion, silently muting the emergency oil light on your biological dashboard, while the engine beneath the hood slowly burns itself to ash. This chemical deception is made drastically worse by our panicked morning habits, exposing lie number 9, the morning coffee rush. Within seconds of waking, millions of conditioned citizens stumble toward the coffee pot, pouring high doses of caffeine into an empty stomach. This ritual is a catastrophic mistiming of basic human endocrinology. During the first hour of waking, your body undergoes a natural, evolutionarily perfected hormonal spike known as the cortisol awakening response. This controlled release of cortisol is designed to gently elevate blood pressure, mobilize blood glucose, and naturally transition your brain from slumber to alert consciousness. When you dump caffeine into your bloodstream during this delicate peak, your brain senses the artificial chemical surge and down-regulates its own natural cortisol production. You effectively ruin your body's built-in alarm system, teaching your adrenal glands to become sluggish and dependent on an external chemical crutch. Furthermore, as that morning caffeine dose rapidly metabolizes 4 hours later, it coincides with the natural midday drop in cortisol, creating the infamous, devastating mid-afternoon energy crash that leaves you reaching for a second, third, or fourth cup just to survive the workday. When confronted with their relentless consumption, high-dose caffeine users invariably resort to lie number 10. Caffeine doesn't affect my sleep. Thousands of proud corporate soldiers boast that they can consume a double espresso at 9 o'clock at night and lay their heads down at 10, falling fast asleep without a single problem. This is a terrifyingly ignorant misunderstanding of sleep quality versus sleep state. Falling unconscious is not the same as achieving restorative sleep. Caffeine has an average half-life of roughly 6 hours and a quarter life of 12 hours, meaning that 6 hours after your last sip, half of that psychoactive chemical is still actively circulating through your brain tissue. Even if you possess the genetic capacity to fall asleep with caffeine in your system, the alkaloid violently disrupts your brain's internal sleep architecture. Specifically, it devastates stage 3 and stage 4 slow-wave NREM sleep, the non-REM deep sleep phase during which your brain releases human growth hormone, clears metabolic waste via the glymphatic system, and repairs physical tissue. Studies demonstrate that a late afternoon coffee can reduce deep delta wave sleep by up to 30%, effectively aging your sleep quality by 20 years while you lie completely unaware, waking up the next morning feeling battered, unrefreshed, and utterly dependent on another dose to function. This chemical assault reaches its absolute extreme in the modern convenience store cooler, leading us directly to lie number 11. Energy drinks as performance boosters. Brightly packaged in neon cans and marketed heavily to students, athletes, and exhausted shift workers, these chemical concoctions promise superior cognitive focus and explosive physical output. In truth, they are volatile industrial cocktails designed for maximum nervous system agitation. By combining massive doses of synthetic anhydrous caffeine with high concentrations of taurine, guarana, artificial sweeteners, and absurd quantities of refined sugar, energy drinks trigger a violent sympathetic nervous system shock. This massive chemical surge forces your adrenal glands to dump emergency levels of epinephrine into your bloodstream, causing acute arterial constriction, spiking resting blood pressure, and forcing your heart to work under extreme, unnecessary mechanical stress. Rather than boosting genuine performance, these drinks induce an artificial, hyper-anxious panic state that quickly degrades into profound adrenal exhaustion, systemic inflammation, and severe metabolic dysfunction once the fleeting sugar and stimulant spike inevitably collapses. This frantic search for artificial physical stamina has infected even our recreational health habits through lie number 12, the afternoon pre-workout fix. Millions of working adults, feeling completely drained after 8 hours under fluorescent office lights, chug high-stimulant pre-workout powders at 5 or 6 in the evening to force their exhausted bodies through an intense gym session. These powders, often loaded with 300 to 400 milligrams of caffeine alongside beta-alanine and obscure vasomodulators, create a catastrophic biological paradox. While you may successfully push through a weightlifting routine, you do so by driving your central nervous system into a state of hyper-arousal at the exact time your biology should be winding down. The massive stimulant load completely obliterates your evening melatonin synthesis, pushing your sleep latency back by hours and destroying whatever fragile sleep architecture remains. You return home from the gym to build muscle and improve health, only to inflict a severe chronic recovery deficit on your body, ensuring that your muscle tissue cannot properly repair, your systemic inflammation remains chronically elevated, and your morning fatigue compounds exponentially day after day. To escape this cycle, many well-meaning individuals turn to what they believe is a safe, chemical-free sanctuary, exposing lie number 13. Decaf is 100% caffeine-free. Consumer culture sells decaffeinated coffee as a harmless, completely inert alternative for those seeking the rich ritual of coffee without the nervous system penalty. This is a fraudulent marketing deception. Under current industrial manufacturing guidelines, commercial decaffeination processes are only required to remove roughly 97% of the raw caffeine content. Furthermore, the chemical solvents frequently used in budget decaffeination, such as methylene chloride and ethyl acetate, leave residual trace elements while failing to extract all active alkaloids. A standard 2-cup serving of commercial decaf can easily deliver up to 15 to 20 milligrams of active caffeine, along with other neuroactive xanthines. For caffeine-sensitive individuals or those trying to clean their neural receptors before bed, this supposedly innocent evening cup of decaf is more than enough to bind to sensitive adenosine receptors, delay sleep onset, and subtly fragment delicate nocturnal REM stages without the drinker ever suspecting the culprit. We conclude this section by examining the inevitable, horrifying biochemical trap created by this entire industry. Lie number 14, the adenosine crash pipeline. Modern society treats caffeine like a magic eraser for tiredness, completely blind to the inescapable biochemical law of conservation. When caffeine docks into your brain's adenosine receptors, it does not stop your brain from producing adenosine. In fact, as you push through your day on artificial chemical borrowed time, your brain continues to churn out adenosine at a rapid rate. Because the receptors are blocked by caffeine, this excess adenosine has nowhere to go. It simply accumulates in the extracellular space, like water rising behind a massive concrete dam. The moment your liver finally finishes metabolizing and breaking down the caffeine molecules, those receptors are suddenly reopened. In a single violent instant, the massive reservoir of accumulated adenosine crashes into your unblocked neural receptors all at once. This is the true nature of the sudden, devastating mid-afternoon wall, an artificial biochemical flood that leaves you exponentially more exhausted, foggy, and dysfunctional than you would have been had you never touched the chemical in the first place, trapping you forever in a vicious, self-perpetuating cycle of industrial addiction. We shift our relentless investigation from daytime chemical stimulants to the deceptive evening rituals and pharmaceutical traps designed to force our exhausted minds into submission. Part 3. Chemical sedation and nighttime traps. In a desperate attempt to quiet a racing mind and force the biological curtain to fall, modern society has turned to a suite of chemical sedatives and nocturnal habits that promise peaceful slumber but deliver nothing more than neurological anesthesia. We begin this investigation with lie number 15. A nightcap helps you sleep. For generations, alcohol has been celebrated as the ultimate evening relaxant. A cozy glass of wine or a stiff pour of whiskey to take the edge off a high-stress workday. This is one of the most destructive biological misconceptions in human history. Alcohol is not a sleep aid. It is a central nervous system depressant and a potent neurological sedative. As alcohol metabolizes in the brain, it enhances gamma-aminobutyric acid, effectively knocking out the higher cortical centers of the brain. While this sedation allows you to lose consciousness quickly, it completely annihilates your sleep architecture. Specifically, alcohol is a ferocious suppressant of REM sleep, the vital restorative stage during which your brain consolidates memories, synthesizes emotional experiences, and regulates mood. Furthermore, as your liver frantically works through the night to process ethanol into toxic acetaldehyde, it triggers a cascade of stress hormones, spikes your heart rate, dehydrates your cellular tissues, and causes dozens of conscious and subconscious micro-awakenings throughout the night, leaving you to wake up the next morning feeling utterly hollow, dehydrated, and chemically depleted. When alcohol fails or proves too crude, millions turn to the pharmaceutical industry, falling victim to lie number 16. Sleeping pills equal real sleep. The global pharmaceutical market generates billions selling prescription Z drugs like Zolpidem and powerful benzodiazepines, marketing them as high-tech solutions for chronic sleeplessness. This is a profound pharmacological lie. These chemical compounds do not generate natural, restorative human sleep. They induce a state of uncoordinated electrical sedation. When neuroscientists examine the brain waves of someone under the influence of prescription hypnotics, they do not see the rich, elegant, high-amplitude delta waves characteristic of true deep sleep. Instead, they see a flattened, chaotic brainwave profile that closely resembles light clinical anesthesia. These drugs aggressively knock out the prefrontal cortex while completely bypassing the intricate, sequential sleep cycles required for physical and psychological repair. Users are left trapped in a false sense of security, mistaking 9 hours of chemical unconsciousness for genuine rest, while suffering from profound morning grogginess, accelerated cognitive decline, memory impairment, and severe rebound insomnia the moment they attempt to stop taking the medication. For those seeking a more natural alternative, the wellness industry peddles lie number 17, melatonin supplementation misconceptions. Promoted heavily on pharmacy shelves as a harmless, natural sleeping aid, over-the-counter melatonin has become a multi-million-dollar obsession. Consumers routinely consume massive megadoses ranging from 3 to 10 milligrams per night, operating under the naive assumption that if a little of a natural hormone is good, a massive amount must be better. In reality, your pineal gland naturally produces melatonin in minuscule, delicate picogram quantities, not milligrams, to serve as a simple biological timekeeper, signaling to the body that darkness has fallen. Dumping megadoses of a powerful hormone into your digestive tract completely floods your endocrine system with up to 100 times its natural physiological concentration. This massive hormone overload causes your brain's melatonin receptors to desensitize, down-regulating your body's internal production capacity. Instead of gentle sleep, users experience severe hormonal imbalances, vivid, terrifying nightmares caused by unnatural REM rebound shifts, morning depression, and a permanent disruption of their endocrine timing, leaving them more reliant on synthetic supplementation than ever before. In a modern world saturated with digital screens, tech-savvy consumers attempt to bypass these sleep disruptions using lie number 18. Blue light glasses solve everything. Amber-tinted glasses and software filters have been marketed as a magical shield, convincing users that wearing a pair of tinted lenses allows them to endlessly scroll through social media or work on spreadsheets right up until the moment they close their eyes. While blue spectrum light is indeed a primary suppressor of pineal melatonin release, it is far from the only variable. Simply filtering out a specific wavelength of light fails to counteract the intense alertness signals sent to the brain by bright overall room illumination, high-contrast screens, and above all, the emotionally charged, high dopamine content being consumed. Scrolling through outrage-inducing news, engaging in competitive digital environments, or processing stressful work emails maintains your autonomic nervous system in a state of high vigilance, regardless of what color your glasses are, keeping your heart rate elevated and completely overriding any subtle benefits the light filter might have provided. This desire for evening stimulation reaches its absolute logical extreme in lie number 19. I sleep better with the TV on. Millions of adults refuse to go to sleep without a television screen flickering at the foot of their bed or a streaming show playing on a loop, claiming the ambient noise lulls their overactive minds to rest. This habit is an absolute catastrophe for sleep quality. Even when your eyelids are closed, your optical nerves and auditory cortex remain active, continuously processing ambient environmental inputs. The flickering light from a television screen pierces through thin eyelids, sending unpredictable brightness cues directly to the suprachiasmatic nucleus and suppressing melatonin production throughout the night. Simultaneously, the shifting audio frequencies, sudden volume spikes, and narrative tension of television programs keep your central nervous system trapped in a state of hypervigilant fight-or-flight mode. Your brain never fully commits to deep stage 3 slow-wave sleep because a primitive part of your neural architecture remains on standby, listening to the television for potential threats, guaranteeing that you spend the night drifting in light, highly fragmented, non-restorative sleep. This assault on the nervous system is further compounded by our modern dining habits, exposing lie number 20. Heavy nighttime meals promote sleep. The myth of the food coma has convinced generations that eating a massive, calorie-dense meal right before bed is the ideal recipe for a long night of deep sleep. While a heavy load of carbohydrates and fats can induce a temporary, lethargic drop in energy due to blood shifting to the digestive tract, the long-term physiological consequences are disastrous. Digestion is a high-energy, heat-generating mechanical process. When you consume a heavy meal late at night, your stomach and intestines are forced into intense labor at the exact time your metabolic organs should be powering down for nocturnal maintenance. This digestive work spikes your core body temperature, directly opposing the crucial cooling process your body requires to initiate and maintain deep sleep. Furthermore, laying flat with a stomach full of churning acid and undigested food triggers silent gastroesophageal reflux, elevating your resting heart rate and causing constant hidden microarousals that shatter your sleep architecture without your conscious knowledge. We conclude this third part by dismantling a fashionable health trend that frequently backfires. Lie number 21. Cold nighttime showers for relaxation. In recent years, biohackers and wellness enthusiasts have championed ice-cold showers or cold plunges immediately before bed, claiming that lowering body temperature is the key to instant sleep onset. While it is scientifically true that your core body temperature must drop by roughly 2 degrees Fahrenheit to initiate sleep, taking an ice-cold shower right before stepping into bed achieves the exact opposite physiological result. Exposing your skin to freezing water triggers an acute sympathetic panic response. Your brain interprets the sudden freeze as a cold shock, releasing a massive wave of adrenaline and cortisol to keep you alive. Simultaneously, peripheral blood vessels instantly constrict to preserve core heat, causing a sharp rise in blood pressure. Instead of cooling your core and calming your nervous system, an ice-cold shower leaves you standing in your bedroom with a pounding heart, surging stress hormones, and a furnace of trapped internal heat, completely sabotaging your ability to drift into peaceful, restorative slumber. We enter the physical sanctuary of the modern home to expose how modern architecture, consumer comfort culture, and misguided lifestyle habits actively sabotage our biological recovery. Part 4. Environmental and lifestyle sabotage. Modern society has spent decades re-engineering the human bedroom into a hyper-insulated, thermally stifling, and technologically saturated environment designed for short-term luxury rather than long-term biological survival. We begin this spatial audit with lie number 22. Warm bedrooms are cozy and healthy. For generations, real estate marketing and interior design trends have conditioned us to view a warm, plush, heavily heated bedroom as the ultimate expression of comfort. This thermal environment is an absolute catastrophe for human sleep physiology. In order for your brain to initiate sleep and transition through the vital stages of Stage 3 and Stage 4 NREM, slow-wave sleep, your core body temperature must experience a mandatory drop of roughly 1 to 2 degrees Fahrenheit. A warm room, anything above 68 degrees Fahrenheit, creates a thermal barrier that prevents your body from radiating excess heat through your hands, feet, and face. Trapped in a thermal furnace, your body is forced to engage in active thermoregulation all night long, causing sweating, elevated resting heart rates, constant tossing and turning, and severe fragmentation of deep delta wave sleep, leaving you to wake up feeling hot, dehydrated, and utterly unrefreshed. This misinformed pursuit of luxury extends directly into the bed itself, exposing lie number 23. The ultra-soft luxury mattress scam. High-end mattress manufacturers sell the illusion that sleeping on a cloud-like, ultra-plush memory foam mattress is the pinnacle of physical self-care. In truth, these overly soft sleeping surfaces are mechanical traps for the human musculoskeletal system. When you sink into a soft, unsupportive mattress, your heavy hips and pelvis drop below the level of your spine, throwing your vertebral column into severe, unnatural alignment. To prevent permanent tissue damage while you are unconscious, your central nervous system is forced to maintain continuous, low-grade muscle tension in your lower back and core. Throughout the night, as your joints endure relentless physical strain, your brain triggers dozens of subconscious micro-arousals, brief, unnoticed shifts into lighter sleep phases, just to force your body to alter its posture. You wake up with chronic back stiffness, joint inflammation, and profound fatigue, completely unaware that your expensive luxury mattress was spending all night physically straining your body instead of resting it. In an effort to burn off evening restlessness and cure this lingering fatigue, many fall prey to lie number 24. Exercise before bed tires you out. High-powered executives and busy working adults, unable to find time during the day, routinely schedule intense cardio sessions, high-intensity interval training, or heavy weightlifting at 8 or 9 o'clock at night, operating under the naive logic that physically exhausting the body will guarantee instant sleep. This is a profound physiological miscalculation. High-intensity exercise is an acute physical stressor. Engaging in strenuous physical activity spikes your core body temperature to dangerous highs that take hours to dissipate, while simultaneously flooding your bloodstream with adrenaline, noradrenaline, and high levels of cortisol. Furthermore, high-intensity movement activates your sympathetic nervous system, driving your heart rate up and suppressing natural melatonin synthesis. Trying to sleep immediately after an intense workout is like trying to park a race car while the engine is still revving at redline. Your body remains in a hyper-aroused, chemical fight-or-flight state for hours, preventing your brain from descending into deep, restorative sleep cycles. This misapplication of fitness becomes even more psychologically damaging when brought directly into the sleeping space, leading us to lie number 25. Working out in the bedroom. Due to space constraints or the popularity of home gym equipment, millions of people have placed stationary bikes, treadmills, or home desks directly next to their beds. This spatial integration completely destroys your brain's delicate neurospatial mapping. The human brain is an extraordinary associative engine that relies heavily on clear environmental cues. For optimal sleep onset, your brain must hold a single, pristine neurological association with your bedroom, that the bed represents a sanctuary of absolute rest, safety, and psychological surrender. The moment you introduce high-intensity physical exertion, dripping sweat, or high-stress work emails into the exact same physical space where you try to sleep, your brain blurs those boundaries. Standing next to a treadmill or looking at a workstation from your pillow triggers a subconscious surge of cortisol and performance anxiety, ensuring that the moment your head hits the mattress, your brain stays in a state of subtle vigilance, anticipating work or physical labor rather than rest. When sleep refuses to arrive in this stressful environment, most people commit a critical behavioral error, exposing lie number 26, staring at the ceiling until you fall asleep. Trapped in the dark with a racing mind, the average insomniac stays glued to the mattress for hours, tossing, turning, checking the clock, and growing increasingly furious as the hours slip away. This prolonged lying awake in bed is a catastrophic form of classical conditioning. By remaining in bed while anxious, frustrated, and wide awake, you are actively training your brain to associate the bed itself with acute psychological distress and prolonged wakefulness. Over time, your brain develops a conditioned arousal response. The simple act of getting into bed triggers an automatic spike in blood pressure and adrenaline because your nervous system has learned that the bed is a place of struggle. Sleep psychologists refer to this as psychophysiological insomnia, a self-perpetuating cycle where the bed becomes a battlefield, and the harder you actively try to force yourself to fall asleep, the more awake and agitated your brain becomes. In a desperate bid to diagnose and fix this bedtime agony, modern consumers turn to wearable technology, falling into lie number 27, the sleep tracker obsession, orthosomnia. Millions of people now go to bed wearing smartwatches, rings, and sleep bands, waking up every morning to eagerly check an arbitrary numerical score generated by an algorithm. This obsession with perfecting sleep metrics has given rise to a recognized clinical condition known as orthosomnia, a severe anxiety-driven state where the relentless pursuit of optimal sleep scores actively destroys the ability to sleep. Consumer-grade sleep trackers use indirect metrics like movement and heart rate variability, which are notoriously inaccurate at distinguishing true sleep stages. Yet, when a wearable device informs a user that they had poor deep sleep or a low recovery score, the user experiences a placebo-like wave of psychological anxiety and somatic fatigue, feeling exhausted simply because a wristband told them they should be. The device intended to solve sleep becomes a constant hypervigilant observer, turning a natural biological process into a high-stakes daily performance test that keeps the nervous system perpetually stressed. We conclude this fourth part by confronting the ultimate, arrogant myth of modern productivity culture. Lie number 28. I can train myself to need less sleep. In the high-stakes worlds of finance, entrepreneurship, and military hustle culture, individuals frequently brag that they have conditioned their minds and bodies to function perfectly on 4 or 5 hours of sleep a night through sheer willpower and gradual habituation. This is a biological impossibility and a dangerous lie. The human requirement for 7 to 9 hours of sleep is a hardwired evolutionary imperative encoded deep into our cellular DNA. There is no biological mechanism, genetic adaptation, or behavioral trick that allows a human brain to adapt to chronic sleep deprivation without severe physiological penalty. When you consistently sleep 5 hours a night, you do not adapt. You simply become chronically numb to your own impairment. While your conscious mind may convince itself that it is operating at full capacity, objective neurological testing reveals severe cognitive deficits, slowed reaction times, impaired prefrontal cortex executive function, elevated systemic inflammation, microvascular damage, and a rapidly escalating risk of cardiovascular failure and neurodegenerative decline, proving that trying to train yourself out of sleep is nothing more than slow, systematic biological suicide. We pivot our forensic examination from the nocturnal arena to the deceptive, high-voltage illusions of our waking hours. Part 5. The Daytime Energy Mirage. Modern industrial life has constructed a sophisticated matrix of dietary traps, behavioral distortions, and artificial lighting environments that systematically drain human metabolic vitality while convincing us that our chronic daytime exhaustion is merely a random, unexplained mystery of biology. We begin this daytime audit with lie number 29, the high-carb breakfast energy lie. For generations, corporate food conglomerates have flooded airwaves and cereal boxes with the toxic narrative that a healthy, energetic morning begins with a mountain of carbohydrates. Sugary cereals, toasted pastries, processed bagels, and large glasses of concentrated orange juice. This high-carb breakfast is a biological disaster. When you flood your bloodstream with refined, simple sugars immediately after an overnight fast, your blood glucose spikes to dangerously elevated levels. In response, your pancreas panics, releasing a massive wave of insulin to clear the toxic sugar from your circulation. This insulin surge drives glucose rapidly into fat stores, triggering a severe biological phenomenon known as reactive hypoglycemia. By 10 o'clock in the morning, your blood sugar plummets far below baseline levels, leaving you with cold sweat, brain fog, acute irritability, and a desperate, shaking physical fatigue that forces you to crave yet another hit of fast-acting carbohydrates. In a frantic attempt to survive this midday energy crash, millions turn to a quick afternoon rest, falling directly into lie number 30, power napping any time of day. Modern wellness culture frequently celebrates the power nap as an all-purpose remedy for daytime lethargy, encouraging exhausted workers to steal 20, 40, or 90 minutes of sleep whenever fatigue strikes, regardless of the clock. This indiscriminate daytime napping is a catastrophic destruction of sleep regulation. Throughout every hour you are awake, Your brain steadily accumulates adenosine, building up a powerful, non-negotiable force called homeostatic sleep pressure, the essential neurochemical fuel needed to drive you into deep, continuous, slow-wave sleep at night. Taking a long nap late in the afternoon, particularly after 3 o'clock, acts as a pressure relief valve. It bleeds off that carefully accumulated adenosine, resetting your brain's internal sleep clock prematurely. When bedtime finally arrives, your brain lacks the requisite sleep pressure to initiate or sustain sleep, trapping you in a miserable cycle of late-night insomnia followed by severe next-day exhaustion that no amount of afternoon napping can ever repair. This persistent daytime lethargy, however, is frequently not a sleep deficit at all, exposing lie number 31. Dehydration disguised as fatigue. The human body operates as a complex bioelectrical sea where every cellular transaction, nerve impulse, and metabolic enzyme conversion relies on fluid dynamics. Yet the vast majority of modern workers exist in a state of chronic, low-grade intracellular dehydration, consuming coffee, sodas, and energy drinks while completely neglecting pure water. When fluid levels within cells drop by as little as 1 to 2%, the physical efficiency of mitochondria drops precipitously, slowing down the enzymatic synthesis of adenosine triphosphate, the fundamental cellular currency of physical energy. Because the human brain struggles to distinguish between true sleep pressure and the systemic lethargy caused by fluid restriction, people routinely misinterpret cellular dehydration as profound tiredness. Instead of drinking a glass of water to restore cellular volume and enzymatic activity, they reach for unwanted sugar and high-dose caffeine, further dehydrating their tissues and exacerbating the very metabolic exhaustion they are trying to escape. This biological confusion is compounded by the artificial environments in which we spend our working lives, bringing us to lie number 32, indoor sunlight deficit. Modern humans spend upwards of 90% of their lives trapped inside thermally controlled, artificially lit concrete boxes, moving directly from dimly lit bedrooms to fluorescent-lit offices. This indoor lifestyle creates a severe environmental disconnect in human biology. Your central circadian pacemaker, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, relies on high-intensity photons of natural sunlight hitting specialized retinal ganglion cells in early morning to set your master biological clock. Artificial indoor lighting, rarely exceeding 500 lux, is an absolute joke compared to the 10 to 100,000 lux provided by natural morning sunlight. Failing to step outside into natural morning light keeps your master clock trapped in a perpetual twilight state, preventing the crucial suppression of nighttime melatonin while halting the morning production of serotonin, the vital neurotransmitter responsible for daytime mood, focus, and energy. You spend your entire day operating in a foggy, semi-conscious biological haze simply because your brain was never given the environmental signal that the sun has actually risen. This environmental twilight is made exponentially worse by the relentless cognitive demands of modern work culture, exposing lie number 33, constant multitasking fatigue. In today's hyper-connected corporate world, frantic task switching is praised as a badge of honor, with employees simultaneously toggling between dozens of open browser tabs, instant messages, video calls, and incoming emails. This continuous context switching is a devastating tax on the human central nervous system. The prefrontal cortex, the evolutionary seat of executive function, focus, and logical reasoning, requires vast amounts of metabolic energy in the form of blood glucose to maintain concentration. When you force your brain to constantly pivot between disparate tasks, your neural circuits are forced to burn through glucose reserves at an alarming rate, generating high levels of metabolic waste in local brain regions. This intense, continuous cognitive load induces profound mental exhaustion and executive burnout that individuals mistake for a lack of physical sleep, completely unaware that their profound brain fog is the direct result of a fractured, overstimulated, and structurally exhausted prefrontal cortex. To recover from this mental burnout, many fall victim to the intuitive but deeply flawed logic of lie number 34. Rest means lying on the couch all day. When weekend recovery arrives, chronically exhausted workers frequently respond by engaging in total physical immobilization, spending 12 continuous hours sprawling on the couch, watching television, and barely moving a muscle under the belief that absolute physical stillness is the ultimate form of rest. Biology operates under very different laws. Prolonged physical inactivity causes blood flow to stagnate, drops resting oxygen saturation levels, slows lymphatic drainage, and lowers core body temperature. Far from restoring vitality, complete immobilization leads to systemic lethargy, joint stiffness, and a dramatic drop in metabolic rate. The human body requires low-intensity movement, such as light walking in nature, to stimulate microvascular circulation, flush cellular waste products, and gently elevate oxygen delivery to brain tissue. Lying motionless on a couch all day merely deepens your physical fog, leaving you feeling significantly more drained, heavy, and exhausted than when you first sat down. We round out this fifth part by examining the desperate, self-destructive reward mechanism used by millions to power through the late afternoon slump. Lie number 35, the sugar rush fix. Around 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, as brain power wanes and focus vanishes, workers instinctively head to the vending machine or pantry for candy bars, pastries, or sweet coffee drinks, seeking a fast, reliable burst of physical stamina. This is a complete biological trap. While consuming high quantities of refined sugar does trigger a brief, pleasant wave of dopamine in the brain's reward centers, giving the temporary psychological illusion of renewed vigor, the physiological reality is disastrous. The rapid influx of simple sugars forces another massive spike in insulin, which swiftly clears glucose from your blood and drives your system into yet another round of severe hypoglycemia. Worse still, this constant cycle of sugar spikes and insulin surges induces chronic systemic inflammation and impairs cellular insulin sensitivity over time, damaging the very metabolic machinery responsible for generating sustainable physical energy and ensuring that your chronic daytime fatigue becomes a permanent, self-inflicted state of life. We reach the final, terrifying summit of our 42-part biological autopsy, where all the disparate threads of corporate exploitation, technological overreach, and physiological self-harm converge into a single, inescapable reality. Part 6. The Industrial Sleep Trap. Having systematically exposed the chemical illusions, physical traps, and environmental sabotages that shatter human recovery, we now confront the psychological distortions and systemic structures designed to keep you exhausted, compliant, and perpetually profitable. We begin this final descent into the machinery of modern exhaustion with lie number 36, bedtime revenge, bedtime procrastination. Every night, millions of overworked, emotionally drained human beings lay in bed, staring at illuminated phone screens until 2 or 3 in the morning, knowingly sacrificing essential sleep despite knowing they must wake up exhausted in a few short hours. This is not simple self-discipline failure. It is a desperate psychological rebellion against an oppressive economic structure. When your daytime hours are entirely owned by corporate employers, domestic obligations, and endless digital demands, late-night hours represent the only window of absolute, unmonitored personal autonomy you possess. You sacrifice essential biological repair to reclaim a fragile, fleeting sense of personal freedom, completely unaware that by burning off your vital sleep window to scroll through mindless content, you guarantee that tomorrow you will be even more depleted, vulnerable, and dependent on the very corporate machinery you are trying to escape. This desperate late-night psychological rebellion is made infinitely worse by the digital tethers binding our minds to the workplace, leading directly to lie number 37, the 24/7 connectivity myth. Modern corporate culture has successfully convinced the global workforce that staying continuously accessible via workplace messaging apps, push notifications, and late-night email threads is the non-negotiable price of professional survival and career growth. This perpetual digital tethering is a catastrophic assault on your autonomic nervous system. When you keep your smartphone on your nightstand with work notifications active, your brain remains in a state of hypervigilant threat anticipation. Every ping, vibration, or subtle light trigger releases an immediate spike of cortisol and adrenaline, activating your sympathetic fight or flight response. Even when your phone sits silent, your subconscious mind remains on guard, listening for incoming demands from your employers. Your brain is permanently denied the transition into the parasympathetic dominance required to initiate deep, restorative sleep cycles, keeping your central nervous system trapped in a state of chronic, low-grade panic that drains your cellular energy reserves before dawn even arrives. This constant state of digital panic is actively celebrated and elevated into an ideology through lie number 38, the hustle culture no-sleep badge of honor. For decades, corporate boardrooms, self-help gurus, and high-performance influencers have elevated sleep deprivation to a heroic status, framing 4-hour sleep schedules as the ultimate demonstration of ambition, mental toughness, and unrelenting dedication to success. This cultural narrative is a profound biological absurdity that glorifies physical decay. Sleep deprivation does not accelerate success. It systematically degrades every metric of human capability. Decades of peer-reviewed neuroscience prove that chronic sleep restriction severely impairs prefrontal cortex executive function, ruins creative problem-solving, obliterates emotional regulation, and drastically reduces actual work output, while simultaneously blinding the individual to their own mounting cognitive impairment. High-powered executives who boast about working on 4 hours of sleep are not performing at elite levels. They are operating with the cognitive impairment equivalent to being legally drunk, making reckless decisions while accelerating their own risk of cardiovascular collapse, stroke, and early-onset dementia, all to serve a toxic corporate narrative that views human biological limits as mere inconveniences to be burned away for short-term profit. While corporate culture explicitly demands biological sacrifice, society implicitly ignores the deadly physical warning signs right in front of us, exposing lie number 39, snoring as a harmless habit. For generations, heavy, chest-rattling snoring has been dismissed as a funny, harmless nuisance, the subject of sitcom jokes and trivial bedroom complaints. This societal dismissal covers up one of the most dangerous, widespread medical conditions in the modern world: obstructive sleep apnea. Snoring is not a harmless sound, it is the physical sound of a collapsing human airway, where soft tissues physically choke off oxygen flow to the brain throughout the night. Individuals suffering from untreated sleep apnea experience hundreds of nocturnal suffocation events every night, causing their blood oxygen levels to plummet to dangerous lows while flooding their vascular systems with emergency spikes of adrenaline to shock them back into breathing. This nightly suffocation destroys sleep architecture, causes severe daytime exhaustion, damages vascular endothelial tissue, and leads directly to chronic hypertension, cardiac arrhythmias, and heart failure, proving that ignoring this structural warning sign is one of the most deadly medical oversights in modern public health. When this chronic nocturnal damage accumulates over decades, society dismisses the resulting physical collapse through lie number 40. Tiredness is just part of getting older. Millions of aging adults suffer from crushing daily fatigue, foggy cognition, and chronic physical lethargy, only to be casually told by well-meaning peers and dismissive medical practitioners that energy decline is an inevitable, untreatable biological reality of the aging process. This is a profound medical misdiagnosis that mistakes systemic lifestyle neglect for natural biological aging. While cellular repair mechanisms do alter over time, chronic, debilitating fatigue is never normal. In reality, this midlife energy collapse is almost always driven by highly treatable, overlooked root causes. Chronic subclinical inflammation, severe hormonal deficits, undiagnosed sleep apnea, systemic insulin resistance, and decades of horrific sleep hygiene. By writing off chronic tiredness as an inevitable consequence of aging, modern medicine abandons millions of individuals to a slow, unnecessary decline in quality of life, conditioning them to accept chronic suffering rather than fixing the clear environmental and metabolic imbalances destroying their vitality. This widespread, unaddressed exhaustion created the ideal breeding ground for lie number 41, the multi-billion-dollar sleep aid industry. Modern commercial markets have engineered a vast, lucrative ecosystem of consumer products designed to fix the very exhaustion created by modern life. From high-tech weighted blankets, lavender pillow sprays, and white noise machines to sleep-tracking subscription apps, herbal relaxant teas, and ergonomic foam contours, the wellness market sells billions of dollars worth of consumer items every year. This industry is built on a fundamental deception. It attempts to sell consumer solutions for structural, lifestyle-driven biological problems. No silk eye mask, high-tech noise machine, or expensive sleep tea can counteract the biological damage caused by dumping high-dose caffeine into your system at 4 in the afternoon, staring at high-intensity screens until midnight, sleeping in a hot, sealed room, and living under continuous workplace stress. The consumer sleep industry does not exist to fix your sleep. It exists to monetize your desperation, selling you expensive band-aids that allow you to continue participating in the exact same toxic daily routines that broke your sleep architecture in the first place. We conclude this entire grand tour of human exhaustion by pulling back the curtain on the overarching structural trap that governs modern biological existence. Lie number 42. The ultimate extraction annuity. When you step back and view these 42 lies as an interconnected, hyper-efficient system, a chilling philosophical realization emerges. Corporate civilization has deliberately engineered an environment that systematically destroys natural human recovery. Modern society has replaced natural circadian light cycles with artificial glare, replaced physical movement with sedentary confinement, replaced nutrient-dense food with metabolic toxins, and replaced genuine peace with continuous digital outrage. This environmental destruction is not accidental. It is the ultimate economic design. By destroying your body's natural capacity to generate real cellular energy and achieve deep biological rest, modern civilization creates a perpetual, highly lucrative, two-phase market economy. By day, it sells you high-priced chemical stimulants, energy drinks, and quick-fix sugars to force your exhausted mind and body through the production line. By night, it sells you chemical sedatives, pharmaceutical hypnotics, alcohol, and expensive consumer wellness products to force your hyper-aroused, panicked nervous system into synthetic unconsciousness. You are trapped in an artificial cycle of morning stimulation and evening sedation, paying money at both ends of the biological spectrum to survive an environment designed to drain your life force. The modern underground economy of human vitality has transformed your daily exhaustion into a self-sustaining multi-billion-dollar cash flow engine, proving that in an industrial world built on continuous productivity, true, unmonetized biological rest is the ultimate revolutionary act of resistance.